Today is a big day for every Warframe fan out there, because the Warframe developers, Digital Extremes, have cooked up a completely new game called Soulframe, and from today on, everyone can support the game, become a founder, and gain access to Soulframe together with their friends. So, in this video, I want to give you an overview of the game, how it plays, and what to expect, so you can decide for yourself if this maybe tickles your fancy. As always, big shout out to our generous channel members who help me keep the lights on, and now, let's jump right into it. First of all though, there is one important disclaimer that I need to make. This video right here is not sponsored. I did receive a Soulframe Founders package for free from the Warframe developers, but that came with no strings attached whatsoever. I wasn't required to make any content for it, and recording this video today was purely my own idea. As for everybody who's wondering what this semi-Soulframe release means for this channel right here, the answer is absolutely nothing, because I will keep this channel right here Warframe only. However, I do also want to cover Soulframe going forward, which is why I have a second channel called MHBlacky, and that is where I'm gonna put all my future Soulframe content. And lastly, this voiceover right here has been recorded before the official launch, and there are also a couple of new features that will come only with the launch. Most of what you're seeing in the video though will still be up to date and not be changed by the new update. And with all that being said, let's finally get into Soulframe by first talking about what the game even is. I'm sure many of you have already heard about it in the press conferences and at TennoCon, but there's probably also a lot of players out there who haven't ever interacted with it whatsoever, so here is a rough overview of what to expect. Soulframe is meant to be sort of a sibling game to Warframe, where Warframe is this super fast-paced, high-action intensity sci-fi space ninja game. Soulframe will be fantasy-themed and much more laid-back and down-to-earth. There's no fancy bullet jumping, parkour, and blowing up the entire screen with millions of damage numbers, at least not just yet. It's more what you would expect from a fantasy action RPG, where you play with mostly melee weapons, some bows, arrows, and ranged options, exploring a fantasy world with magic, castles, and all that good stuff. Now, one thing to say here, because a lot of people keep bringing this point up, the name Soulframe does not mean that this game has anything to do with a Souls game, right? It is not a super tough, difficult experience, it's actually quite forgiving. And in general, if you expect this to be a Souls-like game, then you're probably gonna be disappointed. See, in Soulframe, we're exploring a fantasy world that has experienced a devastating war and been taken over by the hostile force called the Ode. Not all that much is known about them just yet, just that it seems like they are sort of an extraterrestrial force that came from a different world, and now that they have taken over, they are polluting the environment and corrupting the creatures, and your job as a player is to fight them and cleanse the world and its inhabitants from those negative effects. Just like in Warframe, you can do this either alone or together with your friends in co-op. That already works for quite a while, and the servers are pretty darn stable. More stable than Warframe for me, actually. And as we're diving deeper into the details now, you're going to be witnessing quite a lot of familiar Warframe DNA. But you know what? Let's talk a bit more about the game world itself. See, Soulframe is set up in a way that there is one open world map with a lot of different activities to partake in. For example, there are multiple different open world boss encounters where you can get special drops for equipment pieces and all whatnot. There are 3 different syndicates to do missions and grind reputation for, and each of these syndicates also then gives you access to different gear, similar to how the syndicates in Warframe work, but you could also play a variety of story quests. These fables, is what they're called, are kind of the main content of the game at the moment, and they work pretty similarly to how story quests in Warframe work, in that you have dialogue throughout the mission with different characters, spiced up with the occasional cinematic. Also, similar to Warframe then, finishing these story quests will give you access to new character classes, equipments, and features. Now, this open world map that I talked about, it's actually not too crazy big. I think I once ran from one corner to the other and it took me between 5 and 10 minutes. Always depends on whether you're interrupted by something or not. And at the time of recording this voiceover, there is unfortunately not a fast travel option just yet. However, it was confirmed that once the Founder Program release happens, so basically when you see this video right now, there will be a craftable item with which you can teleport to different points of interest on the map, kinda similar to how open world teleportation works in Warframe. However, Soulframe is not only this open world, because it also has the more traditional Warframe-themed missions, where there are multiple different dungeon entrances scattered across the world, and when you get in there, you will switch from the big open world map into an instanced mission tile set that works very much the same that missions in Warframe work, in that you're in a specific map that consists out of different rooms that are randomly rearranged, so no two missions exactly feel the same. As of right now, there are 3 main tile sets available, those being on the one hand the Undercity of Durmak, then we have the Foggy and Spooky Glades tile set with a lot of scaly boys, don't get caught by them, and there's also a relatively new environment called the Nathans. Didn't really have the time to play that just yet, so I'm gonna put you some official footage in the background, but of course, similar to the different planets in Warframe, going forward I'm pretty sure we can expect much more. But let's now talk about your personal home as a player. Similar to Warframe, where you have your orbiter in which you do all your day-to-day business, buying stuff, upgrading your items, yada yada yada, there is a Soulframe equivalent for that too. This one is called the Nightfold, and the fun part about this is, unlike Warframe, in Soulframe you can access this Nightfold all the time as long as you're not in combat. This right here is what it looks like, and when you take a stroll around, you will find a lot of things that you already know from Warframe, where in Warframe you have the different consoles in your orbiter to do different things, you know, the market console to buy stuff, the foundry to build stuff, the mod console, your arsenal, yada yada yada, and in Soulframe, these consoles and their functionality are represented by NPCs that are called ancestors. Right now, there are 4 of them. We have Ulrich, the Leonardo da Vinci looking dude with a long beard. This guy is basically your codex. You have Tuvalkane, the blacksmith, where, you guessed it, you make new items, weapons, armor, and gear. There is the Witch Verminia, who's mainly responsible for visual customization. And even though I can't show it in-game right now because it isn't patched in just yet, there will be a cool camel character once this video goes live, and that's basically gonna be the market, you know, the real money shop. However, the main focus here is the tent in the background, the one with the campfire. This one is basically your arsenal. That's where you change your weapons and gear and upgrade your equipment. So how about we actually do a little bit of meta talk and go over which types of progression mechanics you can expect in the game. Now, just to be 100% clear, what we're going to talk about right now is not a Soulframe guide, okay? We're just going to have a brief overview of how the progression in the game works, and if you want to have more in-depth guides about all of this, then I will do that on my second channel once I get to it, and if you can't wait for that, then there is my lovely colleague Sarah Loves Archery, who's got you covered with all the good stuff over on her Soulframe channel. Go check her out if that sounds good to you. But yeah, progression mechanics in Soulframe. At first glance, this looks very much different to what we have in Warframe, but at closer inspection, there are quite some similarities. One big difference though is that where in Warframe every single quote-unquote character class is a totally new quote-unquote hero, you know, changing classes means changing the entire Warframe. In Soulframe, this is very different. Here, you create your one single only character, and then changing your character class, aka changing your Warframe, means changing your pact. Your pact is basically a magical armor, and that is the equivalent of a Warframe coming with unique different abilities. However, the rest of your character's look and armor set will remain unchanged. Right now, there are a handful of different pacts available in the game, each and every one of them having 3 different abilities. Just wanted to mention that. For the sake of this video though, I do not want to go deeper into each and every one of them. Also, similar to Warframe, where we have ability strength, range, and duration to modify our abilities, in Soulframe, we have the 3 attributes Courage, Grace, and Spirit, which basically do the exact same thing. However, unlike in Warframe, where we modify the values with different mods, here in Soulframe, there are of course also items that increase these values, but mainly you get to assign them freely with this interface right here. Beyond that though, each and every pact also has a specific upgrade tree that you can invest points into to give it specific new abilities and features, and there's also an equipment piece called Talisman, you know, that's basically a necklace that can be used for additional stat boosts. As for the weapons, as I previously said, you go to the blacksmith to Volcane to get them in the first place, and then they can be switched out in this arsenal screen right here too. Just like in Warframe, also here in Soulframe, any quote-unquote character class, any pact, can wield any weapon, but it's a bit more restrictive than in Warframe in the sense that every weapon has a so-called attunement to one of the 3 attributes, courage, grace, and spirit, meaning if you want to get the most damage possible out of your weapon, then it makes sense to pick one that goes hand in hand with whatever you invested most into. There is a later game mechanic where you can also change the attunement of a specific weapon to whatever you desire. Just wanted to say that unlike in Warframe, where it really doesn't matter which weapon you put on which Warframe, here in Soulframe you do at least have to consider your attributes a little bit. As for weapon modding, this also exists in Soulframe in the form of the rune system, where for every weapon you can put 3 runes with different stat boosts into the weapon, and there's a specific very rare type of rune that you can put in the middle, which will then open up a specific 4th rune slot to invest further into. This right now is still very rudimentary and in no way as complex as it is in Warframe. I think there are only a handful of different runes available in the game at all, but surely this will be expanded upon going further. And just like for the pacts, also for the weapons there are those upgrade paths as well, allowing you to fine-tune them in the direction that you desire. However, the big thing here is that these upgrade paths are not exclusive to every single weapon, but to the entire weapon class, and also the way that you gain points and forward this tree is by getting different weapons of the same class and leveling them up to their maximum level. Oh yeah, and master rank and account level and all that stuff, that works pretty much exactly the same way as in Warframe. But now, with all the theoretical talk about upgrading your pacts and weapons and all whatnot, you probably want to see some actual combat, and that's exactly what I want to talk about now, giving you an overall feeling of how the combat in the game plays. First of all, most weapons in the game, as I previously said, are melee weapons. There are bows, those are a ranged option, and also magic wands, so if you rather stay at a distance, that is still perfectly possible. And of course, each and every one of those unique weapon classes has their own movesets with their pros and cons. You know, you have the longer swords and spears, but also the very short daggers with which you have to get up close and very darn personal to the enemy in order to actually hit them. You can create combos of light and heavy attacks, block incoming enemy strikes, and this is a very powerful and super satisfying mechanic, there are also parries, which you can execute by blocking exactly in the right moment shortly before the enemy attack hits you. This will then stun the enemy and open them up to a sort of melee finisher, right? It isn't always a finisher. If they have a lot of health, it's not going to instantly kill them, but these block parries deal a ton of damage, and it is super satisfying to play like this. Now, for those players who only wield melee weapons, there is an option to also throw melee weapons to get a bit of ranged capability out of them for those situations where you might have to hit something further up in the air. And there's also a mechanic that is very unique to Soulframe. This one is called Smite, where occasionally enemies will have a glowing light on them, which means you can then perform a sort of maneuver on them where you suck their soul energy out or something. That's actually a super important feature because beyond dealing bonus damage, there are also a lot of buffs and equipment effects that you can get which are triggered on performing these smite actions. Overall though, one theme across the game is it is much slower and more down to earth than what you would expect in Warframe, and for everybody who now thinks, well, that kinda sounds like Soulframe is essentially drifter melee combat from the Viri, I first thought so myself, but it is actually completely different. Warframe and Soulframe melee gameplay are night and day differences. You basically can't compare them whatsoever, which also means that you're not just mowing down enemies like it's Dynasty Warriors the way that you would do in Warframe. Actually, group fights with you going up against multiple enemies are a very scary thing where positioning is incredibly important because if you're surrounded by multiple enemies, they're just basically gonna stun lock you and turn you into a ping pong ball. Soulframe is no power fantasy, and I think that is exactly what makes it so interesting to me because the way it is right now, you actually have to play the game and not just hold melee and win. But yeah, before we end the video, let's also talk about the big elephant in the room, and that being the founder system and the founder packs, because there's quite a lot to unpack here. First of all, if you want to gain access to the game, then you have to get a Founders Package. It's not open for everybody just yet. And for those Founders Packs, there are 4 different options. First of all, 3 starter packs tied to the 3 starting packs, where you're essentially going to get the quote-unquote prime version, which is called wild version of that pact, together with the signature weapon, a talisman, and premium currency. And what's nice here, you will also get some free keys to give away to your friends so they can jump in and play with you. On top of that, there is a location called Eternium Garden, which is a place where founders get a flower that they can plant to have their name in this garden, in this gallery, basically forever, which is a very cool thing. These would be the 3 normal starter packs, but for everybody who wants to support the game even more, there is a 4th pack called the Wild Paragon, and this one basically includes all the 3 others combined, with even more keys for your friends, a special silver flower for this garden, and one item that is unique to this pack only, and that would be the Paragon Greatsword. This is a weapon that, first of all, only Paragon founders will be able to wield. However, they did make it very clear, and this is a difference to the Warframe Founder program, there will be no Excalibur Prime situation. All the gear that comes from these founder packs will be farmable in the game and therefore available for free later down the line. Even this unique Paragon Greatsword, where this will kind of sort of work like the Ignis Wraith in Warframe. You know, the blueprint for this weapon was originally only available in a specific clan operations, but the clans who got it back in the day could infinitely reproduce the blueprint and give away to other people. Well, this is going to be exactly how the Paragon Greatsword is going to be handled in the future, with the one neat feature that if you make copies of your Paragon Greatsword, then it will have your name imbued on it, so whoever wields it will always know where it came from. As for the console versions of the game, right now, Soulframe is only available on PC, but of course in the future they do have plans to bring it to consoles too, and once it comes to the consoles, they of course will have their own Founders program available, so don't worry, you're not gonna miss out on anything. And if you want to see Soulframe content from yours truly, then check out my other channel, MHBlacky, in the description down below. Another massive shout out to Niels V, Demon Lord Cell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nost Linux Gaming, Turtlepeer, Ondakanio2, Skylar Bowser, Mihawki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morazaki, Shadow Lockhart, Hantares, Bait Crusader, Boomia1, Mr. Games Plays, Zave, Awendai, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good soul framing, I guess? Bye bye.